Tommy John surgery. Turns out Corbin Burnes is about to miss the next at least 162 games. And that sucks. We lost Gerrit Cole earlier in the season, but we lose a lot of studs at least once in their career. It feels like it's happening more and more and more, right? We don't actually know. Actually, we do actually know. I'm about to tell you all about it. But fortunately, the connotation of needing Tommy John, as someone who has got it, I had it in 2017, we'll talk about that in a little bit, is no longer, I think, super dreaded because of the effect it has on your arm. So I want to get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of what happens in Tommy John. And it's not about whether or not you're going to come back at least after your first. That is getting better and better and better. It's about the time that you're missing, how long it takes. That is the worst part. That was the worst part for me. I had problems waiting. So this is the definition of Tommy John. Tommy John surgery is a procedure in which a partial or fully torn ulnar collateral ligament, aka the UCL, on the medial side of the elbow, which is the inside of the elbow, is replaced with a tendon from another part of the patient's body or from a cadaver. I didn't think that this definition was going to end with the word cadaver, but here we are. The two places you can get your tendon are either your wrist, not everyone has a tendon that's big enough in your wrist, or a part of your hamstring that wraps around the inside of your knee. Unfortunately, that's the one your boy had. I'm not gonna get super into it, but the reason those two places are the places to go with is because they basically regenerate, not technically, but to where they function and it doesn't affect your ability for those parts of your body to move normally. I will say, getting at your gracilis out of your hamstring sucks. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I told you a little bit about the recovery and why people aren't so worried about it when they need it. Dr. Neil Elatrosh, who happens to be the person that is about to do Corbin Burnes' surgery, estimates about 80% of the pitchers return to their previous level of competition at least. Boston Children's Hospital, which does a lot of these surgeries on the younger generation, because that is actually a lot of the surgeries, reports that it might be even higher, up to 90%. Very rarely are guys just done pitching in games after Tommy John surgery. It just doesn't happen that way anymore, which is a great thing. 2023 article written by the American Medical Association confirms that 35% of active major league players have gotten Tommy John at some point. 1 of every 3 pitchers right now. That's nuts. With some estimates saying that the going rate could reach 40% very, very quickly in the next couple of years. And the longer that you pitch, the higher the chances are that you will get it, which leads us to the Corbin Burnes and the Gerrit Coles of the world. Chris Sale was a great example as well. That guy went like 8.5 years without getting hurt because he's like Gumby. But eventually you will break something, probably. So I got TJ in the middle of a game on an 0-2 curveball to Andrew McCutchen, which I then threw 3 straight balls after that and walked him, which then I got chewed out about later. We don't walk guys after going 0-2. Well, you know what? My elbow's gone, so leave me alone. This was against the WBC team that was getting ready for to play in the tournament in 2017, and I blew out, okay? That's when I learned I had all the different versions of this. So this is all of the different procedures that can happen that are considered Tommy John, okay? We have the Job technique, which was the first that was invented. It involved like drilling into bones and like figurating a new tendon in and out of your elbow. Sorry to be graphic, but that is what was happening. And then we had the docking technique. Pause. Docking is a refinement of the Job method where you're just kind of attaching it onto the bone as opposed to drilling through the bone, which caused other structural issues if not done correctly. Then there's the modified Job technique, which is less invasive. Basically, they were able to isolate it. And then we have revision, which is just getting it again. We have repair and internal brace. That's the one you hear a lot. They repair your one you have now, and then they add a brace underneath it to help fortify the structure of it, which is really popular because the rehab is much faster. And then we have hybrid repair reconstruction. So sometimes they put partial brace in and they put the blah, 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 whatever. I had something similar to that where my tendon actually avulsed, so they docked it, and then they had already taken out my gracilis, so they just put it on top. So I technically have like a double UCL, and it's very unlikely that I tear that thing again, and if I do, that's on me. And then we have biologic augmentation, which is PRP. So you get an injection of stem cells, and you hope that it heals itself. So like those are all the things that we have now. The last 2 we barely even had when I got it, and as you can imagine, it's very scary. But once you kind of wrap your head around it, then you got to deal with how long it is about to take. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline. So this is a normal timeline for Tommy John surgery for those of you that are big Corbin Burnes fans. 4 to 6 weeks, early rehab. That's when you see guys in the brace. The brace is at 45 degrees. I'll show you right here. And then over time, every couple weeks, you straighten it out because the number one thing they want to get is your flexibility back to where it's supposed to be. Full disclosure, when I had that brace on, I would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and the lock would just be open and my arm would be like this. It'd just be straight. And I'd be like, put it back. And I thought I was doing something I shouldn't do. But at the end of that, I believe it's about 8 to 12 weeks. At the end of that, you get to take your brace off and then you get to fully straighten it out for the first time. And I was like, oh, I'm fine. So I had no issues with that at all. The one thing that did suck though, my knee. So the gracilis coming out of your leg, that was the worst part ever. I came out of the surgery and I was like, what happened to my leg? So I had to rehab that as well. You have to do hamstring curls and stuff to the point where you think you're moving and you're not. It is the most painful part. Being in an arm brace and then having the opposite leg wrapped up and then trying to walk with one crutch, maybe the hardest thing I've ever done. So moving on, 4 to 6 months, you ramp out your workouts, you start to work on your mechanical work without throwing a baseball. So this is what you hear when a lot of guys are like, I want to clean up my mechanics. I want to fix things that I wasn't able to fix while I was playing. This is when you do that. Unfortunately, sometimes it gets a little bit robotic and repetitive and you get very methodical in your motion, which I will talk about in a little bit. But then after about 6 months, you get to start throwing the baseball again and feeling your body once again. And this is maybe the hardest part. You're so close. You're on a field. You're wearing cleats again. You're on a mound again. And you can actually start to throw. And that's where a lot of guys have struggled to put their foot on the brakes and take it one step at a time. I was one of those people, but fortunately, this process was happening in the offseason. I didn't have games to watch and get all fired up to go and play, right? Justin Steele, I don't know if you guys have seen the videos of him watching baseball in his brace, but he's pacing around like he's just wants to punch somebody, and I love it. And then 10 to 18, you're fully competitive return. You're going back and you're doing rehab appearances, depending on where you are in your career, and it could be anywhere from 10 to 18. It took me 16 months to get back to the big leagues, and that sucked. Some guys go faster. You'll have to basically play it by ear and see what you can do in order to get yourself back to 100% and then help your team as soon as you come back. Because there are some common issues that come up when you have Tommy John. And we have 2 guys right now that it's pretty stark with. And let's talk a little bit about them. One is Sandy Alcantara. So here's the main struggles when you try to return that aren't, I don't think, red flags for long-term struggles. I think they're just part of the kicking off the rust process. Sometimes your mechanics can get really robotic and you're just not pitching as athletically as you used to, and that might diminish your stuff. So you're not throwing with the ump anymore, and that could be subconscious, that could be worried about getting hurt again, but a lot of times you just get really robotic because you can't remember what it's like to just go compete, not think about your mechanics. That is something I saw a lot in the minor leagues, and guys really hurt their careers with that. Sometimes you have diminished stuff. You just don't see the velo and things don't feel like they're moving like they should because your velo's not there. I will say Spencer Strider is in this group. He's used to throwing 98, he's throwing 95, his forcing fastball is getting shellacked, and he's not used to that happening, so he's relying on his slider a lot. Sometimes your command gets messed up, which is happening to Sandy Alcantara. His stuff's fine. His velo's the same. Everything breaks the same. He's just not throwing it where he's not used to throwing it. That's another thing, that you're a little rusty. You're used to just not having to think about something and having the ball go where it's supposed to go. That's something he's struggling with right now, and both these guys are really feeling it right now with their statistics and their performance on a major league mound, but both of which are normal. They're things that always happen. And neither team has a lot of luxury to let them go hang out in AAA for a bit longer or whatever, because the Braves need to win and the Marlins need to trade Sandy. If I were a betting man, I would bet on both of these guys getting pretty close, if not all the way, to their previous form at some point this season. And then the final thing is sometimes you're just hypersensitive and you're actually worried about getting hurt. That's not a thing that's happening near as much anymore because the numbers have come out that feeling stuff most of the time doesn't mean what they feel like it's gonna mean, and people get over that much faster. Why are people getting hurt? Let me quickly touch on this. Here's the deal. Pitchers know how to optimize themselves at the highest level. We are seeing more pitchers reach their ceiling faster than we ever have in the history of baseball. What that means is more effort put into more pitches in order to stand out in that way. That is not by its nature a bad thing, but it is a function of incentives being attached to effort, which is going to raise the risk of getting hurt. That's just logic. Dr. Keith Meister, who did mine, has been very public in talking about how he thinks sweepers, a different way of spinning the ball, a different arm pattern that guys aren't used to, contributing to this and being a huge contributor to that. I think that's probably true. I also think that fastballs are contributing to it. I think that everyone's different, and where they put stress on their arm is different based on how they throw, but the effort is the thing that is constant. So reining it in is the logical change in order to keep guys healthier. You can do that as a starter a little bit. Like we see it with Zach Wheeler. He takes the foot off the gas a little bit sometimes, and some pitchers are kind of reverting back to that situation in order to get more out of themselves. But for the most part, young guys trying to get to the major leagues, that is not a luxury they can have because they have to show how projectable they are and they can get big league hitters out. Chancing getting hurt is going to be the path that most guys take because it just makes sense. Here's how I see things changing a little bit and the narrative changing. Teams will begin factoring in surgery as a likely option for older guys, especially the Gerrit Coles and whatever. And so the contracts are going to be built with that year in mind. If they haven't had Tommy John and they're 33, 32, and we're signing them to a 4-year deal, there's a very good chance that they're going to need it at some point in this period of time. Believe it or not, 2/3 of all reconstructions are done on kids 16 to 20 years old. It all comes back to the incentives and guys pushing themselves so hard so they can play at the next level. We have to find a way to divorce these incentives for pushing yourself too hard. But I don't know how to do it, but that is what needs to happen. So what can a player do on their own in order to make sure they are in position to stay healthy? Make sure you are warming up sufficiently and the whole kinetic chain is working as it should, and then take your recovery extremely seriously. It's not about throwing through soreness. It's about your body changing because you are sore. Your body will start to shut things down and you will not be conscious of it, and that is what causes his injury most of the time. There's a saying in professional baseball, if you're gonna get Tommy John, get it in the big leagues. And that's what I did. Tommy John sucks. Let me know down in the comments what you think. That's it. Don't get Tommy John. Avoid it if you can.